Okay, so what kind of properties can we renovate? We can renovate single-family residences. We can renovate townhomes. We can renovate condominiums. And the FHA, if we're going to use the FHA 203K, the condominium needs to be approved. And we also need to show that it has a 1.5 hour firewall. Did Sean leave? Okay, Ron, tell us what a 1.5 hour firewall is.
I'm not exactly sure, but usually it's like between the garage and the main house, so that if there's a fire in the garage, it doesn't expand to the rest of the house.
Exactly.
And it takes an hour and a half to burn through that wall.
Exactly. And so that's for a single family residence. So in the event of a condominium or townhome, that's exactly what that means, right? Is that if a fire starts in unit A, that it's at least an hour and a half before it goes to unit B. Unlike kind of what happened at the Marco Polo a couple of years ago, right? Where every single unit just started going up in flames, and it went so quickly that people were literally trying to jump out of their windows, right? Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Ron?
Yeah, I mean, it was devastating because it whipped through that building and destroyed, I don't know, 3 or 4 floors, killed a few people, and basically shut down that project for years. Mm-hmm. You couldn't sell, you couldn't buy, and they had to go through and totally renovate.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. We can also use the renovation loan to take a single unit to multiple. And what we're talking about here is legal units, right? Not uncle going in and boarding up one side of the house and calling it a 2-unit. Not that kind. We are talking about legal full units that you are having permitted, so that you end up with 2 separate entities that are on paper with the DPP legally 2 units or multiple units. You can also use it to take multiple units to single, okay? And then you can use it to facilitate a CPR. So remember, a CPR is a condominium property regime. Is a very popular way here in Hawaii to build horizontal condominiums. Do you want to tell a little bit what CPR is?
CPR is a type of ownership. It's a way to get around subdivision. If you have a property that has adequate land area to have multiple dwellings, you can, and it's on one lot, you can place them under a CPR or a condominium property regime and sell them separately without going through the whole subdivision process.
I have a quick question for Ron. Do you have any knowledge on what the approximate timeline or cost for something like that is? I'm sure it varies on how large.
Yeah, it totally depends on the project and the property and location.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So for a small CPR though, Suzanne, it takes about a year.
Okay.
So, but a lot of it will depend on who's doing your paperwork, right?
Yeah.
So, if you've got someone that's very versed in CPR subdivision, then you're going to have a much better experience than if you're trying to cut costs and stay with someone that maybe it's their first or second time. Great example that I've got for this is I had a buyer, an investor. They bought a 2-unit, so 2 single-family residences on one lot over on the North Shore, right at Rocky Point, right there. Okay, so we helped them to acquire the lot as a 2-unit. We went in and they drew up the plans with the city and county, with their contractor, in order to separate the lots, perform the CPR, meaning that they're going to separate the 2 homes, turn them into 2 separate houses. Because both of those properties were on cesspool, they also had to have the septic tanks put in. Do you want to talk a little bit about the septic tank rule?
Yes, they're phasing out the cesspools, so any property that's on a cesspool will have to be converted, or if they're doing major renovations on a property with cesspool, they will have to convert to a septic system. It's limited based on site size, and then it also limits how many bedrooms you can have. Not bathrooms, but bedrooms.
Awesome. Yeah, so they went in, they drew up the plans, worked with their contractor in order to separate those 2 units, and we were able to use the renovation loan so that he ultimately ended up with 2 separate units at the end with 2 separate TMKs, which then he could now sell off in their separate pieces, which ultimately took his investment from about 1.5 million to 2.5 million, and it took him about 1 year. Yeah. Move-ons are also okay when we are doing renovation loans. So move-ons is something that we really do not have here in Hawaii. In my 25 years of working in this industry, I've only had 2 move-ons, and believe it or not, one of them was just recently. And what that is when for this particular situation, we had an investor. They wanted to turn their single unit property into a multiple unit property. They had a friend that had a shed down in Waimanalo that they were not using. So he literally went down there with his truck, picked up this shed, trucked it all the way up the H1 to Wahiwa, plumbed it down, started to secure it around, and build around it. So that is called a move-on.